Yo, over the past year, I started getting really interested in combining AI with 3D. It's a great mix that combines the control of regular art and odd nature of AI. This method is really good if you want to keep your old techniques, but want to also experiment with AI tools. These tools can become our new rendering engine for our 3D models. I've always mixed all the techniques and mediums I could to achieve desired result. Back before AI was a thing, I was using 3D to help myself with making these illustrations. I was blocking out the elements of the illustration inside Blender and then painted and draw over it in Photoshop for hours until it looked good. Most of good illustrations are made by blocking them in 3D first, but people are usually hiding that fact that they are using 3D software because they think they will be perceived as less skilled artists. Even though being a digital artist clearly implies all digital tools should be at your disposal. Which means yes, even the AI tools. It was similar even in the old days, with artists hiding the fact they were using camera obscura to structure their paintings. Despite people not liking the AI part of this workflow, I grew attached to this combo, and my goal is to master this method, so I can one day make solo animations that look amazing. But I'm still far from that. Since people often seem a bit confused about what they see when they watch my animations, I thought I would show how I actually make them. Because a lot of people think it's just about clicking one button or typing few prompts to make my whole animation. It's still about 70% manual work using pre-AI methods. This method is about taking each element of our 3D composition and adding details with Stable Diffusion on top of it, then composing it back to our scenes with those details baked in. Let me show you an overview of how I do it. First, we prepare the models for animations. You can do it in many ways. From scratch, find a model online and edit to your desires, or nowadays, use AI to generate a rough one. We'll just need a picture of what we want the model to look like. We generate the character images in Stable Diffusion by enabling an open pose control net, so it's generated in neutral stance, T-pose or A-pose. Then we move it to the 3D generation side that will give us non-optimized for animation dense mesh. The shapes and forms are all there. They just need to be optimized. The character head could use of some more details. We need a decent 3D base for face as it's the major part of our character. The trick in generating more detailed 3D face of our character using those sides is to crop the image, so we have only their face. In this way, the AI will focus on working on just the face, giving it more details. If we are using AI main models, we need to retopologize them, which means we need to essentially redo them, but since we have something to follow, now it's easier and faster than doing it from scratch. Character retopology can take about a full day of work to prepare, so I only do it to characters that will be often used. The purpose is to reduce the density of the mesh and also set the flow of topology to something that is workable when being deformed in animation. The AI models are getting better and better in time, so one day it might not even be needed to retopologize them. Bad news for 3D modelers, but good news for general artists. This method for creating assets is now my go-to method. Here, for example, I needed a rusty longsword model, so I drew a sketch of it in Photoshop and then sent it to Forge for improvements. Couldn't generate the rust on the sword, so I added it in Photoshop. There is a joy in creating something from scratch, but some projects can really drain your sanity, especially when you feel like you spent already too much time and they are not even half done. Those artificially made models really save the time of an independent animator, who is essentially tasked with doing the job of multiple people. Once the object is created, I place it in my scene, then decimated it to get the mesh density lower and continue my animation with it. Now when animating, I do it mostly from my head. When I have trouble, I record myself performing the movement and then using that recording as a reference. Sometimes I use already made motions from Mixamo. They are especially good for walk cycles. You can modify every walk cycle by using combine method in any layer editor. Here I use Mixamo walk cycle on this skeleton, and then I use him in the background of this scene. When done animating, I render every character and background separately with alpha transparency. I use a custom script that lets me render the frames only where the keyframes are, since I want it sometimes on 1s, sometimes on 2s, and sometimes on 3s. There is no way to do that natively. Also, we want to render it in a way that cuts the unused space. That way we can generate using lower resolution, which will speed up generation of image and give us more details. Tick those checkboxes and press Ctrl B to make new render region. Each element, in their own separate folder, awaits the improvements with image-to-image mode in Forge. Typing the prompts that describe the model best, and turning on the control nets that will help us preserve the shape of our 3D model the best way possible. First, we will generate a one image using these two control nets, Gani and Depth. Then, when I get an image that I like, I take it, then turn on another control net, this time reference control net, and use the previously made image inside that control net. This way, we have the best chance to keep consistency every frame. I used to not use control nets, which was a massive mistake. The control nets do help with consistency in major way. While this process gives me very nice details and style, the problem emerges with this method. It's not super consistent through all the frames. So the flickering is visible between the frames, and some frames are just too different from other ones. We will never manage to completely remove the differences between frames, but we can apply some band-aid solutions. Ultimately, this is a quirk of this style, and one has to deal with a bit of weirdness it produces. Also, we have backgrounds to cut away. We send the frames we generated with Forge to DaVinci, and cut the white background with its Magic Wand tool. Then we use couple instances of the Flicker node on it. A free will do, I guess. But we are still not done with cleaning it up. While the node might reduce the flickering, we still need to do some manual work on it in Photoshop. I will be painting over stuff, color correcting and blurring stuff I don't want on as many frames as I have energy to do so. I can cut some elements from one frame and paste it on the other frames to reduce the inconsistency. Also, it still pays up to have a good looking 3D model, as you can always use that to swap between AI frame and 3D frame. What I mean is that we can erase the AI parts that we don't like, and since the 3D frames are underneath the AI frames, it will allow us to swap parts. It's not all we will be doing here in Photoshop, but we will talk about it in later section of the video. Now we are coming back home to Blender, with frames ready to be synchronized with the keyframes. Using image sequence node and keying its offset to make the frames appear one after another in the correct order. In this example, I know I animated on the trees originally, so I key the offset accordingly to that. Using color ramp to squash the white borders, if there is still any, and do some color correction. And that's how it's generally done. But there's no one way to do it. Every scene might require different composition choices. What will stay as 3D? What will I add AI details to? Everything is an experiment. Let's talk more details and start with making backgrounds now. My backgrounds are just images. Here's how I create one of them in one way. I sketch them with mouse, as they don't need to be detailed, since Stable Diffusion will add details to them. I'll go back and forth, adding or erasing from what Stable Diffusion gave me, until I get something that I want. Also, don't forget there is nothing forcing you to make everything go through AI. If your 3D model looks good on its own, you don't have to do it. You decide which elements should be transformed, and which will stay as 3D and how to compose it. Since we talk about backgrounds and how mine are just images, we need to find some ways to capture the shadows and make characters interact with the background elements. Here the skeletons are moving around, but also their feet are interacting with grass on the ground. How did I do that? I just drew the grass being moved by their feet over their frames. I like to do it that way because I have a bit of drawing and painting experience. Now with shadows, we will be using the shadows that our 3D models have cast before. Use character models as holdout and make the floor material be transparent with ability to hold shadows cast upon it. Then hit render and we will drop those shadows above character frames. Let's talk about some other work I had to do in specific scenes. Here I wanted to make a close-up shot of my character's face. I wanted more details on his face since it's in focus. After some testing with going through different settings in Forge, the best result I got was this. It's not bad, but the nose is clearly changing the size each frame, and there is a lot of flickering present. I wanted a more polished shot. The solution I come up with was just to add the Stable Diffusion details to one frame, and then project that frame on my 3D model's face. That way I got extra details with correct lighting, and no flickering and good consistency. To do that, we duplicate the head for a temporary shot and hide the original head. Then we apply a mirror modifier. If the mesh has any shape case, Blender won't let you do it, so get an add-on that helps with that. Apply armature modifier as shape key. Turn on that shape key. Then we unwrap the model from the exact angle, project it from view. Now I will assign the texture as the frame we added details to with Stable Diffusion. Adjust the UV map to fit the head. Lastly, turn off the shape key and reapply the armature modifier. I'm pretty happy with this result. Essentially, this shot is proving that 3D models are very important. I will definitely experiment more with just one frame projection in future. Let's talk about some more details. For example, I made these swing trails just by smearing the frames with smear tool in Photoshop. In that case, we didn't even need AI, it looks okay on its own. Let's look at this shot. There are bugs coming out of this first skeleton mouth. The other skeleton is covered with moss and shrooms. I did this shot as an experiment. For the bugs, I drew their simple unrefined shape on few frames. Then I took those frames and applied the method I discussed earlier. Process one frame to make the AI understand what you want, then put the image in reference control net and batch process those frames. Then just bring them back to Photoshop, delete the white background and adjust the hue saturation value to match the shot. For the shrooms, I did the same, but I did not put a lot of effort in it. Now with moss, I generated it using geometry nodes, just a green icosphere repeated hundreds of times around the bones. I have isolated just the moss, with the bones set as holdout when rendering it. Then I batch processed those frames with the same method as the bugs. And then I added them on top of our body. This method basically said goodbye to 3D rendering engines. Stable Diffusion is the rendering engine for me. Some things that I did not talk about in this video are video-to-video methods. I experimented a bit with it. From what I tried, I found the outcomes too unpredictable. The style also does not follow the reference image perfectly, but it is good with consistency, and there is no flickering issues. I do not like it so far as I'm never sure what I will get, but it definitely has potential. Oh yeah, also one last thing. By the time I finished my project, we have better AI models now. Hunyuan just made this feature that generates much lighter and better models, with quads and sensible topology. That might reduce the retopology process in a major way. You just need to correct few things here and there, and it should do. Alright, that's it for this video. I doubt anyone watched so far to this point, but if you enjoyed it and want to keep me going, I do have a Patreon. It's currently sitting at proud 0 supporters, so hey, you could literally be the first. No rewards yet, just pure endorsement. If you like what I do, that's the best way to back me up. Goodbye and stay based.